As you know, we're doing a special tonight on David Bowie. I assume the world and its mother is doing a special on David Bowie tonight, but it wouldn't be as good as our special because we have Pat Carty from Hot Press, and that's really all you need to know, to be honest. Pat, how are you today?
Good, Tom. Thanks very much, and thanks for that lovely introduction. A bit underplayed, if you ask me, but that's all right. Go ahead.
Dare I ask, do you remember getting this news 5 years ago? Did it make an impact on you?
Very much so, yeah. I'll tell you where I was. I was in the bed because it was early in the morning. But the night before, I was at the first Dublin Bowie Festival. So I was inside in the Grand Social throwing shapes to Rebel Rebel, who are a great Bowie cover band. And then, I was woken up by the phone just saying, Bowie has died. And it's kind of hard to believe. I mean, did we know he was sick? I don't think we were aware of it at the time, were we?
Well, strangely, when I heard the album, there's loads of references to death on it. There's loads of If I Never See England's evergreens.
Did you notice that when you heard it that weekend?
Yeah, I did. I said it to my wife. I said, Bowie is dying. And I did a 2-hour special with Jerry Leonard, who was in for the Bowie special.
Yeah, he played at that show.
Yeah, I did that on Sunday night, and he was dead the next day. For a moment there, I felt guilty. I thought, has my 2-hour special caused his death? Went through my mind for a minute.
You upset people, but I wouldn't go that far.
You know, so yeah, were you devastated or? I
was put out. Yeah, I mean, I know people who are an awful lot worse than me now, but it was when you know this happens all the time. I suppose when musicians die and people go bananas on social media and all that. But there is the odd one that it does feel a bit like a mate has passed away, and he would certainly have been one of them because he was just like everybody else and like everybody listening. I mean, he turned my head around completely when I was a young lad, and when I got properly into him, and that's in the 80s. And there was a decent period of time there when I listened to very little else apart from David Bowie, just getting album after album because, I came to the party late as it was because I'm so young.
Yes.
But, but I mean, and that series of albums from, I would start with 1971 with Hunky Dory up to Scary Monsters, and I'd include Let's Dance as well. There's just, it's flawless. There's nothing, there's no feet put wrong at all there.
It is an odd thing though, isn't it? I think, my mother once told me to sell my records. Could you get rid of those old records? Like I was trying to make my childhood last longer by holding on to them, She's saying like this is...
Still doing that.
Yeah, and I kind of felt, do you not understand anything about Bima? Do you not realise...
Yeah.
And when he went, I really felt like a huge part of my early childhood had kind of gone with him, because he was ever present.
Well, I suppose the great thing about, not the great thing about someone like that passing away, but his work is there forever.
Yes.
We have that that's as close as I ever got to him. But, his work is there forever and it stands up as and we can judge it now as a complete body of work. And there's an awful lot to be said. I stopped there at Let's Dance. There's an awful lot to be said for an awful lot of the records that came after that too.
Oh, absolutely. So listen, you've picked 5, you've spent an awful lot of work on this, and you've written a fantastic article on Station to Station, which I'll point people towards in a minute, and I will tweet out the link to it as well so people will be able to read it too. But you've picked 5 in particular. Start me off there at one of them.
Right. Well, okay. Well, what I have here now, people can't see this at home, but I have the visual aids. I have the records here beside me. And it's impossible to pick, your favorites. So this is just completely at random, apart from number 1 for now. So first up here, I'm holding up to, Tom, what's this called?
Hunky Dory.
Hunky Dory from 1971. Now, I reckon there's a lot to be said for Space Oddity, if it's called that, or the David Bowie album, and even the one before, the 60s one, and The Man Who Sold the World. But I think this is the one where David Bowie became David Bowie. The David Bowie we know and love. The big deal here is that he wrote a lot of these songs on the piano, which seems to have, as opposed to The Man Who Sold the World, which is very much a guitar album, which, if you read the Bowie books, it said he wasn't quite as engaged with the songwriting as he was when it came along to this one here. And this one has, if you were lucky enough to get to see him as you and I did a few times, thank God, he played. These are songs that are classics that will be part of his live set forever. Changes, Life on Mars, Do you remember, were you there you remember when he played the Olympia in the 90s?
Yeah.
And he came out. Now, I saw a picture today that the Olympia Theatre tweeted, which surprised me very much because he's standing on the lip of the stage and he's wearing a pair of flip-flops, which I didn't notice at the time. His only fashion faux pas, perhaps ever, apart from the hair maybe in the 80s. But anyway, what I remember from that gig is him walking out with the 12-string and just playing Quicksand on his own as the first song. Now, people might say, well, you're misremembering that, Pat, but I think that's what happened. I also remember, because there was no Ticketmaster or anything like that time. So I got the last ticket in Dublin to that gig. I was living in Clonbrassil Street at the time, and my girlfriend had said, no, look, those tickets are on sale at 9 o'clock, so make sure you're there down at the Olympia. And I slept it out and ran down. I got there about 10:30, and there was one ticket left. And one says, do you want it? So I nearly took the hand off her. I said, of course I want it. And then the girlfriend went berserk. I said, well, if it was me, I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have taken the one ticket. And I says, well, it's not you. It's me. And it's David Bowie.
I'd say everybody has a story somewhat like that, because I have to say I'd have to make a relationship decision now. Somebody was only one ticket for me, and it's going to be me. Anymore. Well, there you go. Yeah. Let's give people a little blast of that. I'm going to just play them a little bit of Kooks from that album, which he wrote about his son, didn't he, Duncan? And it's beautiful. And it's not just, like, if you look at side 2 of that as well, just that he wrote that for his son, but then there's the 3 tribute songs on the back of it. A song for Bob Dylan, Andy Warhol, and Queen Bitch, which is pretty much a Velvet Underground song, I suppose. It's fantastic. All right, give him
and
his
Bewley Brothers. Is that about his brother? Oh, we could be here all evening.
Hang on, see if this works. It is.
Will you stay in our lover's story? If you stay, you won't be sorry. We believe in you. Soon you'll grow, so take a chance with a couple of kooks hung up on romancing.
Just a little bit of Kooks from Hunky Dory from David Bowie. Just remembering him tonight, as I think the entire world is, and we have Pat Carty with us. That's your first album, Hunky Dory. A beautiful album. It makes me sad to hear it, I have to say. It still gets to me all these years later. That also is the album where the band and Tony Visconti and all came in around him, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, if you think, I think it's impossible to pick these things, but like the standout one on that is probably is it Life on Mars, maybe? Okay. And I was reading about Tony Visconti talking about, or is it Tony Visconti on that one? I'm not sure, but anyway, that a lot of the vocals on that were all one take. So if you think about the vocal in Life on Mars, where he does that kind of octave jump in the it's an impossible thing. If you've ever been drunk in a karaoke bar, it's not the one to go for, let me recommend from personal experience. But there's a story about that. There's an old French song called Comme d'habitude, which was adapted by Paul Anka, I think, and turned into and became My Way for Frank Sinatra. But apparently a year before that, Bowie was asked to rewrite the lyrics, translate the lyrics. And he I can't remember what the title of the song was, but he was rejected. But he adapted that melody and stuff like that. So that is where Life on Mars comes from.
What a song.
Which is, even if that's the story isn't true, it's still a great story.
Yeah, no, I think it is true. I've heard it many times. I've heard him telling it. So that's one of your favourite albums from him. Let's go for another one. What's your second one going to be?
Okay, we jump forward 9 years to 1980, and I have in my hand here Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. Now, here's the big question. Is this the last classic David Bowie album?
There's a hard question. I think
that is a hard question. Yeah. I'm not sure. I did say in that article that you mentioned that I reckon this is probably the last absolute Stone classic. Not that he didn't make very good records after that, but following on from Berlin and the Berlin trilogy, which I'm sure we'll come to, which was very critically acclaimed, but maybe not as commercially successful as it might have been. He had decided, again with Visconti, and they recorded this in New York, I think, that he was going to make a commercial album this time. And so you have the same band again that were with them from station to station onwards. So you have Dennis Davis and you have Carlos Alomar. And what was the name of the guy who played the bass? I don't know, it's going out of my head. But anyway, and also Robert Fripp came back on this and played a lot of guitar on it. And it has 2 massive hit singles on it. First of all, Ashes to Ashes, which was his first number 1 in England since since I think the reissue of Space Oddity. I think that might have been the other number one. And a massive hit single. And such an inspiration, apparently, for all those new romantic people. If you look, you can't, of course, folks at home can't see the cover, but they can imagine it's in my hand.
Absolutely.
Where he's dressed as the clown. And also you have things like, there's a cover of a Tom Verlaine song on it. Now, there's a story that was Carlos Alomar's idea, and they brought in Tom Verlaine to play on the song, but he couldn't get the amps to work properly or something like that. So Visconti claims now at this stage that he's not even on it.
Really?
That they just didn't even bother recording him or turned him down, and Robert Fripp took care of it. And then Pete Townsend is on Because You're Young. And he came in and he said, what do you want, lads? And Bowie and Visconti said, we want Pete Townsend chords. And that's what they got. And also, that's the one. Isn't that the one with the Japanese woman going bananas and screaming and shouting on one of the songs? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. It's a brilliant album. Ashes to Ashes, say, an absolute massive success for him. And when you think it's only like low is 77 inside such a short period of time, he's gone through such bloody unbelievable albums. Give people a little blast of Ashes to Ashes just to bring them back to that.
It's true. They got a message for the action man.
Just going to fade that because I want to play the songs themselves a little bit later, but with Pat Carty from Hot Press talking us through 5 of his favourite Bowie albums, and that one, just listening back to it there, Pat, God, I remember the time the great debates about the fact that he was referencing Major Tom in it, and I think that was the first time people started thinking, was Major Tom about drug use? I don't think anyone had thought about that up to that point.
I was just thinking when you mentioned that, do you remember is it the video for Black Star, the song itself, and there's the astronaut on the moon with the skeleton in it?
Yes.
So was he closing up shop there by referencing back to both Ashes to Ashes and Space Oddity?
I would say he was.
Was he that self-aware? He probably was.
I think he was, yeah. I think he was. I think he knew. I think,
you don't get much of that from, you wouldn't get much of that from a Slade record or something like that.
No, you wouldn't. Yeah. I think he was very self-aware. And I know there's a debate about whether he knew he was dying on the last album. I certainly think he knew he was dying. I don't doubt. So
I think he got the, I remember I saw that 5 years documentary and said, about 3 or 4 months before his birthday, he got the news that, listen, the treatment's over,
Yeah.
And he kept working. So that's something else.
Yeah, it really is. Right, Pat, we're on to your third one. What are you going for number 3 now?
Okay. You can't do a list of his best albums without having the Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars from what year is this, Tom? 1972? If I had to guess. Yeah. This is just... so this is a great rock and roll album, and this might be, I suppose, there's a good chance that maybe this is a lot of people's first Bowie album because it's such a famous one. The character is so famous. I mean, we're looking at the cover there, and he's standing outside the Furrier's K West. Now, could we have a bit of a Beatle freak out here and saying K West? People looking at that and going, "Oh, does that spell Quest? Was that what he was on? Was it that kind of thing?" And there's a story about these Furrier guys complaining to RCA and saying, "What are you doing putting us on the cover?" And then people started turning up and taking photographs outside and going into the shop. So they weren't too upset then. Also, Bowie's sent outside. He had the flu, apparently. He didn't look like that at the time.
He looks amazing.
This has been hand tinted, so he didn't have the blonde. Yeah. He didn't have the blonde hair at the time. Apparently, he had brown hair at the time. So he didn't quite look like an alien. He wasn't quite there yet. But this album, right, concept album. So here's the story. This alien comes to Earth because there's an apocalypse happening in 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
He's here to save us all, but he starts having sex with everybody, as he would do. And then by the end of it, listen, I might be paraphrasing here, but by the end of it, he dies in the crowd's arms in rock and roll suicide. And So that's the loose one. It's certainly better than Tommy. How about that? But, the story here, right? Starman, right, is the big hit single from here. And there's that moment when he, and I don't know, you mightn't be old enough to remember this. I'm certainly not. No, but when he played that on Top of the Pops, that was his big breakthrough. Yeah. And you can see the clip, and he has the astronaut boots on and the whole lot, and he throws his arm around Mick Ronson's shoulder, and apparently this was the great moment that started off the 70s. But up until nearly the last minute, Starman wasn't on the record because it wasn't written. It was going to be Chuck Berry's Round and Round, and that might even have been the title of the album. And someone from RCA said, Dave, I don't hear a single here. So he goes off and writes Starman. Think about this now. Goes off and writes Starman at the last minute, sticks it on, and there you go.
Wow.
And then if you think of like the songwriting on Rock and Roll Suicide again, I mean, the way that changes at the end and becomes this whole other thing from simple C to G guitar chords, and then it becomes this thing with minors and flats and everything. It's amazing. And also, I mean, a big shout out here to Mick Ronson as well, of course.
Oh, that's great.
And you're talking about this is around the same time as the Mott the Hoople album, All the Young Dudes, which they both worked on, and also, of course, Transformer.
Yeah, sensational stuff. I'm going to play a little blast of one of them now. Let me see what I'll play Starman. I know I was too young to see him on I don't think we had the BBC either. But when
Starman is playing,
when
Starman is playing, everybody should think of Somewhere Over the Rainbow when it gets to the chorus. Okay?
All right.
Didn't know what time it was, the lights were low, I leaned back on my radio, some cat was laying down some rock and roll, not a soul he said. Then the loud sound didn't fade, came back like a slow voice on a wave of fate. That wasn't no DJ, that was hazy cosmic jive. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He's told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's...
Well, I won't lie, Pat, I'm trying to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow there, and I'm not having much success.
Somewhere over there's a starman. Same song.
Yeah, no, not hearing it there. I find Mr. Bowie innocent of all charges, and I will not be sending a check in the direction of whoever wrote Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Okay, the prosecution can
Yes. Pat Carty with me from Hot Press. We're looking back on 5 of Pat's favourite Bowie albums. 3 so far. We have a quick break to get out of the way, and we'll be back at 2 more to come after this. Newstalk. You're very welcome back. Tom with you, Newstalk 106 to 108, and we have Pat Carty with us from Hot Press tonight, looking back on just 5 albums, 5 Pat's favourite albums from David Bowie. So far, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, Ziggy Stardust and Hunky Dory. You have 2 more to take, Pat. What are you going for next?
Okay, well, I'm going for 2 at once here, Tom. I'm going to cheat. Low/Heroes. Because they both came out in 1977, which just goes to, imagine a band of Bowie stature doing that now. 2 albums in the 1 year and 2 albums like that. Now I know this is a favourite of yours. This might be your favourite.
This is my favourite album. Yeah, I'd say a lot. Why do we pick favourites? I think a lot of the time there are emotional reasons at play that aren't really subjective. And came out during punk rock, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And I used to listen to A New Career in a New Town every time before I went to do an exam. In those days, there were a lot of exams. So before I'd get up in the morning, before I left the house, I'd play New Career in Newtown and then go off and do the exam. So it just it means a lot to me.
Hoping for a new career.
I suppose I felt like I was going out in the world and who knows where I was going to go to next, and this would set me up for it. What can I say?
Fair enough. Yeah. So what about the debate between side 1 and side 2?
Yeah.
No.
It took a lot of commitment. But I got it.
How about I said this to you, and I'm going to duck now when I say this, and people can send all the letters to Tom, not to me. But if you combine side 1 of Low and side one of Heroes, would you not have his greatest record then? And maybe, the old art stuff on side two, maybe you could, because you'd have to be in the mood for that stuff now. I wouldn't get up in the morning and want to put on Warsaw.
You wouldn't. But, I need to lie down and think about that, Pat.
I know, I don't mean it.
I felt it was a measure of me as a human that I would go in and listen to side two.
well, let's tell a story about one of the songs on side two. Back in 75, Bowie was in The Man Who Fell to Earth, and there was he assumed that he was supposed to do the soundtrack for it as well. Well, turns out he wasn't. He was asked to submit his music to a committee along with other people, and he just went, I don't think so, lads. But the only song that was ever released from what he worked on, and he worked with Paul Buckmaster, who was the strings guy who worked with Elton John and Queen, and I think, and even worked with The Darkness, who we might be aware of. And the only song that came out of it, apparently, was Subterraneans is the only thing that came from that sound. I mean, obviously, he probably changed it after, but you got to mention here two people, I suppose. Tony Visconti again, who doesn't get enough credit for this Berlin trilogy, I don't think. I mean, the drum sound that everybody tried to copy on this is down to him. He had some sort of machine that he reckoned changed the very fabric of time. That's what he told Bowie on the phone, and they got this drum sound from. And the other guy, of course, is Brian Eno.
Yeah.
Brian Eno, one of the great chancers in the history of popular music, but in a good way. A non-musician, as he says himself, so he goes in and plays the tape recorder or whatever he was doing inside in this thing and writes some of the stuff. But there's other stories in this. I don't know how true this is. Maybe you heard this one before. That there's one of the songs, I think it's Be My Wife, or maybe it's What in the World, where all the musicians just changed instruments.
Right.
So I may be misremembering this as well, but that I heard that they just changed instruments because they had what do you call those things Eno had, the cards that he has?
Yeah.
Suggestion cards.
Yeah, they sound like it's made up.
Monopoly yes. Community chest. and he held it up to Bowie and it said, listen, you can't pass go until you play this guitar solo, or whatever it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
But all sorts of different... So Bowie, back just before Station to Station as well, had got into... bands like New and Tangerine Dream and Kraftwerk and all that. So this is his return back to Europe, I suppose. Although we'll come to the main thing now in a second. So this and Heroes, yeah. And also let's give Lodger a shout as well, because if you heard, it's always kind of considered a run to that 3 litter.
It is a bit.
A couple of years ago, for one of the big box sets that came out, Tony Visconti went back and remixed it completely. And apparently Bowie had always wanted to do this. And he gave his permission before he passed away. And that is a revelation altogether. So if people haven't heard that, they should definitely get onto the internet and try and sort that one out.
I'll give people a quick blast of something from Low before we go on to your favourite. Beautiful as it is, and featuring Mary Hopkin in there, isn't she? She does the little do-do-do piece, doesn't she? She was Tony Visconti's girlfriend at the time, if I remember correctly.
And also Tony Visconti didn't hang around because he had a different girlfriend by the time they were doing Heroes, because he was spotted sneaking out for a kiss by the wall by Bowie, and that's where the two lovers standing by the wall come from.
So if Tony Visconti had been, more loyal, perhaps, maybe Heroes would never have arrived.
Small price to pay for a great song.
Small price to pay. Not
for Mary Hopkin, of course.
Yeah,
I'm sure she wasn't.
No, I'll just point out, Mary had a great career. I'll just point out that that's a very controversial view you have of mixing Low and Heroes together into one album.
Was it?
But I'll bet it. Yeah, I'll bet it is one that is not without support. So now
you wear a fake mustache.
You'll never be seen.
But if I was,
yeah, you'll never be seen in public again. So you're going to do the impossible now and try and pick your favourite Bowie album today. You'd have to say, what are you going for?
Right. Well, this week, and I did think a lot about this week as I was working on it, but I'm going to go for Station to Station, which I think came out in January of 1976, I'm guessing. I can't see at the back of this because I'm too old. Station to Station, right? So first of all, you had Young Americans, which is this changeover from the glam sound of the dying glam sound of Diamond Dogs, which is a fantastic record as well. And so he was in America. He was working in Philadelphia. Brought in Carlos Alomar, came in. Luther Vandross is on the back of that, Young Americans, and it's a great record. And it's this kind of soul R&B stuff that he loved as a kid. But while he was there, after working on that, now he was on an awful lot of cocaine. Not your regular government recommended amount, a proper amount of cocaine. He had the Kabbalah and he had Nietzschean philosophy and everything going through his head. But he was also listening to these German records that we mentioned earlier. So all this swings into focus on this record that he made in Los Angeles, which he could never remember himself. He always said that he only knew he was in Los Angeles because he read about it later on. And so you have that great band have come together. You also have Roy Bittan, Bruce Springsteen's piano player, who is one of the unsung heroes of this record. And Bowie said it was a kind of a cross between the electronic music and the R&B. I hear more R&B on it than the electronic music, apart from maybe his pinnacle, maybe his greatest song, Station to Station, the title track itself, which is a phenomenal thing. 10 and a half minutes, his longest ever song. The train at the start that goes from speakers to speaker, if you have a proper system, was created by Earl Slick on guitar. It's a reference to, when they get into the car and they drive off at the start of Autobahn.
See, there he is getting into cars again. It's a new career in a new town again.
Absolutely. And Golden Years was written for Elvis Presley, although Elvis didn't record it, obviously, which is a shame. Wild as the Wind is a cover of a theme tune from a 50s Western that Nina Simone did. TVC-15 is about Iggy Pop's girlfriend being eaten by the television. They may have been high at the time, Tom. I can't be completely sure. Stay actually came out of, they were trying to get a live arrangement of John and Money Dancing. Now, you denied me when I said Somewhere Over the Rainbow earlier for Starman. Yeah. But if you listen to Stay and you get to the chorus and you sing John and Money Dancing for the chorus of Stay.
All right.
No.
Doesn't work with
You're going to deny me again. And also, Word on a Wing, which is, he was one of the greatest singers of all time, but Word on a Wing, is it his greatest vocal performance? That bit at the end where it's, he's climbing higher and higher and it's slipping in and out of falsetto is just incredible. So today only, I will say Station.
I once, when I found this, I found a way of balancing the stereos on my bedroom windowsill. And then on the street, so I've been able to play tennis. We used to play tennis on the street, and you could listen to Station to Station at the same time. I think it was one of my finest moments.
Well, it's just, I imagine hearing Station to Station for the first time on your phone or something. Would you just be sorry for the kids?
Yeah, that's for them. That's cruelty. Get there, get a speaker either side of your head and indulge.
Oh, absolutely.
And enjoy.
And, you don't have to be, it'll help. But you don't have to be chemically altered.
You don't. You don't at all. That's very.
It's a good rule for life.
Yeah.
You don't have to be.
Yeah, it's you'll get by perfectly well. Where's the track I'm going to? Oh, hang on a sec. It's gone all pear-shaped for me now. Just give people a blast this, and I'll play further tracks a little bit later, but just to set the scene a bit.
Taking you nowhere. Come, baby. Look at that sky, life's begun. Nights are warm and the days are young. Come, baby. There's my baby, lost my soul. But I'm begging you, save her little soul.
Oh, it's so good, Pat. So good. You have to say it. You mentioned his vocal there. The vocal is sensational, and that whole period when he was around Philadelphia and appearing on American kind of soul shows and singing, he was so cool. The band were so cool. The performances were unbelievable. The talent's off the clock, isn't it?
Yeah, second ever white performer on Soul Train, I think, when he did that. I mean, you can look at those interviews as well and see how close to the edge he was sailing as well, though, at that time. Because there's some of those interviews where he's an interviewer and he's just, he is literally on another planet.
Yes.
But that voice, I mean, he smoked constantly.
Yeah.
And indulged in everything else. So that voice is just a miraculous thing.
Absolutely miraculous. And in the midst of all that too, he did also record Little Drummer Boy with Bing Crosby, didn't he?
But even the vocal on that, like when he goes into the bit of, it's not the greatest record of all time, but he goes into the Peace on Earth bit.
Yeah.
And there's a story about him coming in. He only did that because his ma was a fan of Bing. And old Bing wasn't long for this earth. He probably didn't know what was going on at all. But he went in, they were doing Little Drummer Boy, and Bowie said, geez, there ain't anything else we can do. And the two producers went off and wrote that Peace on Earth thing on the spot.
Did they?
And it's still one of his biggest selling singles in England, which is good and bad, I suppose.
Well, I really like it. No trouble with it. Pat, that was very enjoyable. Tell me a bit.
Well, can I do a bit of housekeeping?
Yeah, do please. Yes.
Well, first of all, I'd like to just mention that the Dublin Bowie Festival started today and is running all weekend. They've interviews with Tony Visconti and Rick Wakeman and people like that. Nicholas Pegg, who has written a lot about Bowie, is hosting a lot of it. I was on it last year. They decided he was maybe more qualified. That's okay. That's all right. But people should check that out. Google Dublin Bowie Festival. And the other thing, if you want to know more about Station to Station, I have now. Never mind the quality time. Feel the width. There's about 4,000 words from me on hotpress.com where I argue for Station to Station as my favourite Bowie album. But again, as I say, that's only today. If you ask me again next Friday, I'll probably give you a hunky dory or something like that. That's
the glory of the love that we have. Pat, thank you very much for that. Hotpress.com for that article. It's a beautiful article. It's getting great reaction on social media station. 4,000 words, lovingly assembled, and just a really enjoyable read.